that was $75,000. So that was what it was included in the original agreement. Since the agreement has been approved, additional cost estimates have been received that reflect an increase of the cost to $150,000. We understand while that work is all done by the Bioscience District, they're the one doing the cost estimates and the contracting. Our role is just in the reimbursement of the cost. My understanding is the driver of the cost increase is related to inflationary impact of the cost of concrete, which has seen some significant price increases in the last several weeks. So that is the request from the Bioscience District has been to increase the reimbursement amount from $75,000 to $150,000, which would allow the full updated cost estimate to be covered for the construction of the concrete base. So that is what is on the agenda for consideration tonight. While specifically when we adopted the financing plan for the reinvestment zone, we had the specific $75,000. That was the original estimate. There is funding, there is a contingency fund in the reinvestment zone really for reasons just as this related to cost increases or overages that are not expected or anticipated.
Brent, I might add too that when the estimate was originally put in the financing plan, it wasn't based on any true design of what the base would need to be for the sculpture. And now that it was designed, that it's more in scope of what the base needs to be because of soils. They had, just to summarize it, the estimate wasn't really reflective of what truly they needed to do.
All the factors that they now know since they have completed design.
Well, and it's a 2.5-year-old estimate,
Right.
which is pre-construction cost craziness. So
I think we should point out that public art has been part of our master plan, and I believe the RZ's master plan, and this certainly fulfills that. Fulfills that desire.
okay. Anything else, Ms. Small? Council, everybody good? We're going to go ahead and pull out and use the public discussion. Correct? Yeah.
Do we need to? I guess you do want it more publicly.
Well, I think that's.
If we're getting calls about it, then let's pull it.
Okay.
And I've received a couple also.
Oh, likewise.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. Item 2 is to receive a presentation regarding the proposed implementation plan for the homelessness and mental health strategic plan. Ms. Glover?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. And actually, this is going to be a team effort. Erin and I have been working together on this project, as well as our consultant, Dr. Robert Marbit, who is joining us virtually. So Erin's going to kick us off.
Just a quick recap. We started our homelessness and mental health strategic plan, I think it was early summer, and where we entered into a contract with Dr. Marbit. We're doing this plan in coordination with the city of Killeen as well as Bell County to develop a 5-year strategic plan so we can reduce and prevent homelessness in our region, strengthen physical, mental health, and social service that supports for unhoused residents. So some elements that we identified in our proposal was to have a final plan with measurable goals and strategies with clear timelines, address equity issues to ensure that all programs and services are viewed through an equity lens. We also want to be very engaged with our community and make sure that they are part of the solution. Working with all of the cities in Bell County, but largely with Killeen and Bell County, we want to make sure that we all come together to develop a shared vision that is countywide. One of the important things is that there are several different resources out here, so we really wanted our consultant to look at all of those existing resources, where there are gaps in resources, and also identify ways to make sure that those resources are easier to navigate. And lastly, look at a key area or areas where social service would be best located and what services should be provided to better serve the communities. So what, I would say mostly Nancy, has done so far in coordination with Dr. Marvitt is that they have gone through and conducted more than 40 focus group meetings and done facility tours in Temple. They have done a great job of getting outreach with surveys and have 436 individuals who completed those surveys throughout the county. Data was presented to you all as well as the Killeen City Council a couple months ago, and as well as to several groups in Temple, Hartford Heights, and Killeen. So next steps, we're still underway with the plan, but some next steps include some building block meetings, so we can develop those short-term and long-term solutions. Some of what Dr. Marvitt is recommending is our initial building blocks is to establish a countywide nonprofit organization to implement recommendations in the strategic plan, hire staff to run the nonprofit and develop those organizational documents, and identify shelter locations both in Killeen and Temple. So as you see, we've had a lot done today, up to this date, but we want to provide a little bit of feedback to you all and receive any feedback as well to you today, but we do hope to bring you a final report in January.
Aaron,
Yes, sir.
would you go back on number one, establish countywide nonprofit to implement recommendations? Go forward. There you go. Number one, right there. Initial building block.
Yes.
The recommendations will come from respective councils and the county commissioners,
Yes.
not from the nonprofit organization. They're implementing, but not generating policy.
Right, the recommendations from the strategic plan. Am I saying that correctly, Nancy?
Yes, what you're asking is the composition of the board of the nonprofit?
Now, I'm asking is, there's some recommendations that are going to be made via the strategic plan.
Right,
And the strategic plan will be put together by,
it's by the coordination of Bell County.
this group is involved.
That's
This is-
right.
The strategic plan is what we have underway right now.
Right.
Okay,
And part of the recommendations will be coming out of strategic plan is to establish a nonprofit organization.
okay,
Initial conversations that we've had about the establishment of the nonprofit organization is that, again, it's a countywide organization, and they'll talk more through the reasons behind that. And the board of directors of the organization, we've discussed having members appointed equally, so perhaps 3 or 4 members appointed by the Temple City Council, 3 or 4 by the City of Killeen City Council, and 3 or 4 by the County Commissioners Court. So the board of directors of the nonprofit organization will be appointed by the sponsoring entity.
Thank you.
But the plan itself is what we're talking about. You know, they would then be the ones to implement the plan that you created and adopt and will be asked to adopt.
Aaron, since the last meeting when Dr. Marvitt was here, or maybe Nancy, one of you, he has presented to the Commissioners Court, or you all have.
We have requested the presentation and have yet to be added to the agenda.
Okay.
Judge Blackburn has asked that both city councils be briefed before the Commissioners Court. So he has requested that timing.
Okay, good.
And we have briefed Colleen.
Thank you.
We have briefed Colleen.
Okay.
Briefed Colleen.
Gotcha.
Looks like-
Okay, so diving into some of our primary objectives, just some of the reasoning behind the recommendations that we're wanting to bring to you today. We need to do some immediate work and need your approval to move forward with that. And the reasons for that is that we want to try to do some immediate outreach and start building with relationships with the homeless individuals that are in encampments or living throughout our community. The process of getting a homeless individual to agree to and participate in their own transition or their own recovery is a long process. So we really do want to start that now. And in order to do that effectively, we really need policies and procedures that are used by all of the agencies and that they're communicating well within each other. So the idea, and this is from Dr. Marbut's brilliant brain, is that a nonprofit organization, sort of an umbrella organization, would work throughout the entire county to coordinate those agencies, develop the policies and procedures, and really set up a framework for success for the homeless individuals that we need to start working on building those relationships with now. The nonprofit, as I mentioned, would be countywide. And as a part of that, we've also realized that substance use disorder treatment is a definite. We absolutely have to have that component represented. A lot of the individuals we feel will have insurance, but some of them won't. Some of them won't qualify for insurance. So those are the ones that we are most concerned about. We do have some partners in the community, Syntex and Hilltop Recovery Ministries, that have agreed to work with us, but we will need a solution for the folks that don't have insurance. So obviously our first step with all of this is to really start engaging those encampments. So we'd like to purchase a small, what's called a sprung shelter, which is just a sort of, we have a picture on a slide coming up here in a second, but it's an easy up, easy down, very transition, like easy to move around, versatile shelter structure that we would be able to utilize depending on the final resting place that we identify. The whys, the homeless definitely need those alternatives and options available to them. We have very limited shelter space in our county, so we definitely need to have those additional options. We have a lot of momentum with our social service agencies, our partners. We've been working really closely with them, meeting with them very often. They've actually helped us to already sort of have a mission statement, a vision statement, some core values, and just some operational sort of guidelines for the nonprofit, just as sort of a starting point for that. So we want to maintain that momentum that we've established with the social service agencies and just continue to build on that. We really do feel like we can start making an impact now. Dr. Marbut has said from the very beginning, don't plan yourself to death. Start if you can start, get started right away. Do the things that you can implement right away to just start that ball moving forward. So we're really trying to be true to that direction. The benefits would be that we would learn how to manage a shelter operation on a much smaller scale. Obviously, we're not gonna run before we walk, so this will really help us get started. And it will also help us, again, get the social service agencies to where they're communicating well with each other, coordinating those services, and filling the gaps that we have identified. And then, of course, ultimately, hopefully reduce losses in the homeless community.
What happens if a social service agency, for whatever reason, doesn't want to participate, doesn't agree with the vision, etc.? What happens then?
Well, we will move on and hopefully they will change their mind later on down the road. Unfortunately, we do have to just keep moving forward, and we can't stop because of an agency that's not willing to participate.
There's not going to be any sort of agreement or a required agreement or anything. A required agreement is not really an agreement. There's not going to be a requirement that they participate, sort of in the vision of what's happening. I mean, there could be some, here or over in Killeen, there could be some social service agencies that just say, not our vision, we're not participating.
Right.
Okay.
We are trying to be very inclusive and really try to find out what those objections might
Sure.
be ahead of time so that we can sort of, make the transition smooth. But Dr. Marbut has said, and we've seen in our facility tours, that co-locating services is better for the client. And we want to make sure whatever we do is ultimately going to provide the best chance of success for the homeless individual.
Sure.
And so hopefully all of the agencies will agree, because their goal is the same as ours, to try to help the most vulnerable people in our community. So hopefully they will. We're gonna try to do everything that we can to encourage them, but, no, there's not
Sure.
going to be a.
Sure. I mean, just, that's a possibility, right? And you just need to know, need to know upfront.
Correct.
Nancy, could you go back one slide?
Yes.
Reduce losses within the homeless community. What do you mean by losses?
We have had several deaths
Oh, so
recently.
that refers to death?
Yes.
Oh, we do want to reduce that. Thank you.
Before you go on, Nancy, I do want to say, to Mayor's point, because Nancy won't say this about herself, but, she has done an incredible job of bringing together the community of social service agencies that have a role and part of their mission is in addressing homelessness issues. And I have never seen more cohesion and momentum and, I think everyone is very much wanting to move forward together. So while her answer is 100% correct, there's nothing we can do to force everyone to come along. She has done a great job, and that everyone so far has been excited to share the vision. And so a lot of great progress has been made even before we've even gotten started on anything significant.
Understood.
Thank you. Prince. So this is an example of a sprung shelter. They have all different types and styles. This is something that Dr. told us about, has been successful in other communities for homeless transitional facilities. And so we can make it look and feel as inviting and warm and all of that, but very, very, very flexible. So we're really, really excited about this model. So our idea would be to purchase the structure itself, and the estimated price is there for you. The reason why we're bringing this to you to try to secure the structure itself now is because we would like to use CDBG funding to pay for it. And that's going to require a substantial amendment to our annual action plan, which takes time. So we would like to get that ball rolling and go ahead and get the structure secured and find a location for it afterwards.
Nancy, you referred, or I thought you referred earlier to a sprung shelter as being mobile, something we can move around.
It is.
How? Oh, this doesn't look very mobile.
Yeah, it actually is. Looking at it, they added just some extras on the outside. You can see like the brick there. That's just a wall. That's not actually the shelter
Right.
itself. But yeah, think of it as
The hangar.
Oh, I see.
Think of it as mobile but not portable. You can move this and reposition it, but it's not something you want to do every day. But so once you finish in an area or you want to repurpose the facility, then you can do it. And military's been using this type of structure for a very long time. And now I think there are about 85 homeless facilities of some form or another that are in a sprung shelter. And the benefit is that it's very cost effective per square foot and you set up right away. So it's a real quick setup.
and still like structure is really well done, like can withstand really high winds and storms and things like that. So
And heating, internal heating.
yes, you can outfit them. Nancy's done a bunch of research on that, plumbing, electrical, mechanical. All that.
Does that price include the,
That's just the shelter.
not putting it?
The price come out of CDBG,
Never
is that in, along with Killeen and Bell County?
This would be just a temple, just for the temple side. Killeen is looking at doing the exact same thing in their community with their own funding source.
Okay, thank you.
Is it something David will come across here and throw me out the door when I ask this question? But is this something that our staff could put up? Or do we
I
have
don't
to
think
hire
so.
specialized people?
Yeah,
It doesn't collapse and move like a.
and we may want to make sure that, you know, we have a foundation.
Come on, Ken.
So there will be a lot, like site prep work involved and things.
Okay.
I mean, it's
Well,
on
no.
a slab and
No, I
Right.
understand that. I meant the structure itself.
I think, it's important to remember, if you recall, boards are able to, effectively use tools to address encampments. We are legally required to have, shelter space available. So we'll be limited on what we can do, to help address encampments, without the ability to have shelter space in our community. So that's why this is such an important priority.
Makes sense.
I assume you would let us know how its operation will go on.
Yes, in fact, I'm gonna talk about that, I think, in 2 slides. So the other aspect of it that we really want to make cover is the substance abuse recovery for men, and I've got women on the next slide. Our friends over at Simtex Alcohol Recovery Center, they have agreed to provide us deeply discounted rates for sponsorship beds. And they have recently undergone an incredible redecoration process and sort of revamping of their entire organization. And we are super excited to be able to partner with them. That expense as well, Tracy, would be covered under CDBG funding.
Can I just say one thing? Working with Dr. Marbutt and Nancy, City of Temple has 2 people that have really dedicated themselves. And I can't tell you how great a job these 2 people have done. They have really got a good vision. And I really think what they're trying to do is make a real effect with the homeless people here in Bell County. And my hats off to y'all.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it.
I'll throw back a compliment then too. If you haven't had an opportunity to go tour Randy's facility recently, it is definitely worth your time, and I'm sure he would be very willing to host you for a tour. It's a really great facility, and we're lucky to have it in our community.
And we're here to benefit Temple and Bell County. That's our goal. We're here to serve this community, and that's what our mission is.
The option for women is, right now, we don't have an option for women other than Christian Farms Treehouse, and they are full all the time. I think they have a very, very long waiting list. So we really do need to have a similar solution for women that we have at Simtex for men. And another one of our local agency partners, Hilltop Recovery Ministries, has agreed to help us with that recovery option for women. We are exploring places that we could potentially use for residential treatment. And once that sort of materializes, we will make sure that that's a part of Dr. Marbutt's final strategic plan initiatives that he outlines there. But in the meantime, we wanted to go ahead and get this rate sort of locked in and approved by you guys. And then once they have a facility.
does Colleen have a like facility or would this kind of be the Bell County?
They do. They just had one open. It's called the Virtue Recovery Center. It's really, really nice. They have 44 beds available. They focus mainly on veterans, but they do take civilians as well. And Rashawn Smith is on our call. She's over in Colleen, that she's just been doing a fantastic job on that side of the county. She set us up for a tour on the 18th to see that facility. So you have options there. Right.
You. So, Nancy did a really good job going over a lot of the needs that we have, but several logistical items that we need to get underway in order to start these efforts. So, one thing with partnering with Colleen and Bell County is that we would need to develop an interlocal agreement One thing that we have discussed with clean staff is splitting those calls 50-50, you know, other than the sprung shelter that we talked about. We do want to get the organization up and running. This would be a nonprofit organization, so we need to work on acquiring our 501c3 status and then an interlocal agreement between Bell County and the cities that what we talked about earlier that would need to be developed. One thing is that we've talked to Dr. Marbut and he's just done such an amazing job so far. We're really excited to see the strategic plan, but we will need some help with our policies and procedures as we get started. And he has agreed to help us with that. And so that's something we're proposing to share the cost with Clean as well and contract with him again. Once a location is identified for the organization and shelter, what we'd like to do is work on a development plan, site renderings, and OPCs for that campus. We have identified some staff. I'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide so you can see our organization chart, but 3 employees that have not yet been funded. So this is the part that we have not identified funding for, but 3 employees that we feel like are needed on the short term that we would also be sharing with the city of Clean as well. And then another thing that we haven't identified funding for as well is developing a website branding or promotional fundraising items, but that's something we want to do as well. Of course, you know, as soon as we can then begin fundraising efforts. So here is what Nancy has put together for the organizational structure for Arbor of Hope. Again, thinking about this as countywide, this is an organization that is serving countywide. So you have an executive director over the entire thing. And then you have 2 areas under the executive director. We have one called development. We could be working on that a little bit more, but essentially that role would be that person would go out into the communities. They would be talking to potential donors about the programming and what benefits, you know, we're providing, and then, you know, really work on those fundraising efforts and bringing in funding for the organization itself. And then a social worker position. This is a master level position, essentially the director of care management. So initially, you know, we're recommending the 3 staff. Ultimately, we would like to see 2 caseworkers under the social worker, one kind of operating on the Temple side, one on the Clean side. But as soon as the social worker comes on, there's a lot of things they can be doing. Starting on a development care management plan, and assembling those agencies that are already providing services to individuals. Dr. Marbut, through the strategic plan, will be recommending clinical tracks that are based on the populations represented in Bell County. And then what the social worker position would do then is look at where there are gaps in programming and then develop programs to address those gaps. So with all that being said, this financing plan that we put together, again, for kind of, you know, the initial is we have identified the services we feel like with the sharing eligible for CDBG CV dollars. So purchasing the sprung shelter Nancy talked about, the substance abuse recovery services we identified to be $150,000, and then $40,000 to contract with Dr. Marbut. The areas I talked about where we have not identified funding is to initially go ahead and hire those 3 employees, executive director, development director, and social worker. And then we have identified some salaries there. We probably need to do a little bit more research on this, but this is based on, I know, a lot of Nancy's research in coordination with Dr. Marbut that she's come up with. But we'll have to look at that a little bit closer as we work with finance to identify funding. And then also developing a website branding and promotional fundraising items. So with that said, we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And again, Dr. Marbut is here. You've heard him a couple times. He's a wealth of knowledge, as well as Nancy. So can answer any questions.
The salary cost will be shared with Colleen?
Yes, so that would be the idea because they would be working for, you know, countywide basically. And I should have said this at the very end. We really would love to receive some feedback from you all today. If this is something you'd like us to keep moving forward with, as Nancy said, you know, we are proposing some CDBG funding, and that amendment process takes some time.
So Bell County's not participating financially.
We have actually considered their work with the diversion center as their contribution. They're making a huge investment in that piece and it is crucial to our success. So we are definitely considering them partners. They have agreed that the nonprofit organization is a great idea and that they are supporting that initiative as well and would be also including recommendations for the board for that. One of the things that Dr. Marbut will include in the strategic plan is a future financing plan for the next 5 years, just sort of moving forward. And in those recommendations, there may be some additional things that he might recommend would be appropriate for the county. But at this time, we're really considering that diversion center their contribution to the project.
Is the county's indigent health fund help fund any of this?
Yes, in fact, the whole indigent healthcare team came to Centex about a month ago. There were like 50 people, it seemed like. So yes, they are definitely involved and are very supportive. Ebony Jackson has been extremely involved in all of the things that relate to homelessness in our community for a very long time. And so she's really excited to see this really take off and has been excited to work with Randy and his team as well.
How about the community clinic?
The community clinic, I think we had conversations with them initially. We didn't really get into any sort of detail about that. We knew that they were building a new facility and so just kind of looked at that as maybe being something that we could address later on. We have toured several facilities though around the state, and it is common to have a small, little campus clinic, just single bed, single room kind of thing. We would love to be able to do that eventually, but we know how they're doing, organizationally right now with a lot of transition. So that would be something we would address with them later on down the road.
That could be included in a sprung shelter?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, in fact, I have pictures from other cities that have used these for their shelter operation, and they have a picture of what that exam room could look like inside there.
Home shelter be for families and individuals or simply individuals?
That is a great question, Deontay. No, we are wanting to build a very low barrier shelter operation. Come as you are, where you are, no matter what your background, what your current situation is. That also would mean we would have some individuals that would have a criminal background. So we definitely want to rely on our community partners that already serve families, like Family Promise and the Salvation Army, and connect those families with those organizations and keep this shelter operation as just adult female and adult male only.
I would add, because there's a lot of great research called the ACEs, sometimes called toxic stress on children. And it's a very long study. Don't want to repeat everything, but the long and short is it is very bad for long-term development of children to be co-located with the adult males and adult females. So you really want to keep those operations separated.
You'll hear more about this in January when Dr. Marbut comes to deliver the final strategic plan, but something that just occurred to me that I feel like needs to be clear when we're talking about sheltering is we're not talking about long-term sheltering. The clinical tracks that either Erin or Nancy mentioned, that's part of what Dr. Marbut will be recommending in terms of, okay, so if you, for example, if you are a person who's experiencing homelessness and you're from Temple and you've been experiencing homelessness for 2 years or less, there's a clinical track that you would follow, and it would just be the shelter services would just be a very short term, think 5-day kind of thing until you're enrolled in the program. That then so if that program involves substance abuse treatment, then you would be enrolled in one of the substance abuse treatment programs. So this is not a long-term shelter center. It is a short-term. So we didn't really make that clear today. So I did want to add that information, and we'll have more detail about what all that would look like. As that's under development right now, but I just wanted to put that out, that this is not a long-term situation. It's for just a brief transition between being able to be enrolled in one of the programs.
Well, I think for our whole community, this is something that I know, especially our business community in our neighborhoods, it's very important that we get a handle on this, and we're gonna be seeing more and more as times get tougher for a lot of people. So I think this is good timing that we need to make sure that, we're providing services, but not enabling them as well. And so I'm glad to hear that there will be services to try to help people, especially with mental health and abuse issues that we try to take care of. And that's a good part of why a lot of people are homeless.
And I would add, I'd piggyback and add to that, you also don't want to create a system that draws people into your community. You want to take care of your community first and not be bringing people up from Austin.
You'll probably recall one of the things Dr. Marvett said in his initial presentation to council was that the people have the highest success of recovery when they're with their support system. So people coming into a community that are not from here, that are not local, their very best chance is for us to help reunite them with their home, so that they have the highest and best chance of recovery.
I think it's not a matter of that do we want it, but we must have something. Just a matter.
I think, and also recall, and Dr. Margaret, you can correct me if I get this statistic wrong, but I believe the analysis that you found in your data was that if nothing is done, if we continue to do what we are doing today, that we can expect, I believe it was quadrupling of a population within 9 years. Is the number that sticks out in my mind. Is that correct?
That is correct. If you keep going, you're in a logarithmic curve now. You're not even a straight line increase, you're logarithmic. And so you'll double probably in about maybe 5.3 years. And then your next doubling would be probably around somewhere around 3 to 3.5. So taken together about 9, you would be quadrupling. And that assumes you do nothing. I mean, you can stop this and go a long way to start reducing it. But if you do nothing, that would be the trajectory you're on.
We owe it to the citizens, right? But we also, in some way, owe it to the homeless person to give them an opportunity, right? So, some sort of trauma or loss of community, maybe we can help those folks get that back. So,
I think that's the plan.
anything else for Ms. Smith and Ms. Glover? Thank you.
Ready to move? We get the thumbs up.
The head nod,
The head
what you're
nod.
looking for.
Thank you
y'all.
all so
You bet.
much.
All right, item 3 is to have a discussion regarding the provision of utility services outside of the city limits. I think Bren and Happy have.
Wanted to provide a little bit of background information before we jump into the policy discussion. So a little history lesson on the tools that cities have historically had related to managing the physical growth of the community. In 1963, the Texas legislature enacted what was called the Municipal Annexation Act. And that act was the original legislation that established the concept of the ETJ, the extraterritorial jurisdiction and provided procedures for cities to annex additional territory into the boundaries, the corporate boundaries, the city limits, if you will. The purpose of the concept of ETJ was to allow cities to designate potential future growth and future service boundaries, so that planning could be done on how those additional services could be provided. Annexation authority was historically provided to cities by the state because legislators understood that cities support the state's economy through the services and growth management they provide. But as you can well imagine, that does not come without conflict, as annexation power, especially if it was non-voluntary unilateral annexation, gives rise to complaints because property owners outside the city limits don't necessarily want to be required to come into the city limits. So ever since the annexation authority was provided in 1963, every session since then, there have been bills filed to walk back that authority and to provide more restrictions on how that can be used. And then in 2019, really municipal annexation from an involuntary standpoint has ended. There was a bill, House Bill 347 became effective, which really requires that landowner or voter approval has to occur for pretty much any type of non-voluntary annexation in the city. The other concept that I just wanted to remind everybody of is the certificate of convenience and necessity, which is also a physical boundary that grants the CCN holder the exclusive right to provide either retail water or sewer utility service within that identified geographic area. Chapter 13 of the Texas Water Code requires that a CCN holder provide continuous and adequate service to the areas that are within its CCN boundary. And these are created for very much the same reason that ETJ is created, to help cities and utility providers plan for where they may be growing in the future, and to help plan for the infrastructure and services that are necessary to support that growth. So the policy question that's on that staff is needing direction on is, given the fact that we aren't really able to use unilateral annexation, or said another way, involuntary annexation as a strategy to implement effective growth management, do we want to continue to provide utility services to developments that are outside of our city limits if those developers or property owners are do not pursue, or not able or willing to pursue coming into the city limits? So, or said in another way, do we want to be a regional utility service provider for areas that once developed will likely always remain outside of our city limits, because it's very unlikely that once a development occurs that you would have a majority of the property owners requesting to be annexed. This is just a quick map that lays out our current water CCN. So you can see it does expand beyond the city limits. And it also, in some cases, it doesn't line up exactly with our ETJ as well. So their ETJ exists in places that the CCN doesn't, and vice versa. We talked about, there's been several cases over the last few months that have come up to staff's attention, where this policy question is very important for us to be able to move forward. We've had cases where property owners are requesting city utility service outside the city limits. We've also had requests from developers to be released from our CCN because they want to get service from other utility providers that are more cost effective, or for whatever reason. So you can see, some examples of different areas in the community where developments are proposed that this policy question does have an impact on. So really today, staff is looking for some direction on this question. Council will recall that you've received some legal advice about some of the considerations in an executive session, but we wanted to confirm that the direction to city staff is to move forward with a policy that would provide utility service only with areas that are either currently within the city limits or that are annexed within the city limits. So we wanted to make sure we understood council's direction today.
People in the ETJ do not pay property tax to the city.
That is
Is
correct.
that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do they get any other kind of city services?
There are places that have historically received solid waste service that continue to receive it, but we no longer add new accounts. But if we had historically done it, we had removed that service. We have mutual aid agreements with surrounding voluntary fire departments. So there are times when we provide fire suppression services, not as a result of the ETJ, but because that building or that area is under the geographic, included in the geographic response. What am I trying to say? They're covered by a volunteer fire department, and if they call on us for assistance, we have some agreements to respond in certain cases. That is all I can think of as examples.
Does the volunteer fire department have a geographical area
Yes,
typically? And is it pretty well stated?
yes.
Like up to the city limits and
Right, because it is, it's in our dispatch services, you get the address of where the 911 call is coming from. Bell County Dispatch Center will then know which department to dispatch based on that address. So it's a defined boundary.
from what my understanding is that many times whenever that dispatch goes out, and maybe to multiple, the city of Temple Fire and the volunteer fire, many times the city of Temple, even though it's not in the Temple city limits, is still the first unit on the scene. So many times I think we're still the primary.
There's two types of emergency service response agreements. You have what's called an automatic aid agreement and a mutual aid agreement. And an automatic aid, that means that if entity A gets dispatched, we also get dispatched. And that's not our typical agreement. Our typical agreement is called a mutual aid, meaning that if they are dispatched and they say, we can't handle this on our own, then we would get dispatched secondary. But there are times that even if we're dispatched as a secondary unit, we may arrive as first on scene.
Right.
Because you've got, like, for example, you've got a completely voluntary, response, personnel. It happens more often than would be ideal that we're serving as the first responder for an area that's not paying property taxes to support that service.
In your question today, though, we're not talking about fire service.
We are not.
Correct.
That's right.
We chase rabbits sometimes. Okay. Well, my thought is that, due to the growth rate of what's happening within the city limits and the value of our water, that we we only provide service within the city limits. And that if there's a development outside the city limits that wants to be served by the city of Temple, that they have to agree to annexation. And obviously that, their annexation would be legal, right? And contiguous to the city.
But we sell water to Little River, right? And some other communities. So.
Yeah.
I'm sure, at higher rate.
We do have some wholesale agreements with 3 or 4 different entities. I actually think that, what is their rate structure? I feel like it's same as retail rate, isn't it?
It is.
So we aren't paid more for it than if they were City of Temple residents, but then they're likely reselling it at a markup to their customer because they also have to have their own billing,
Sure.
infrastructure and distribution infrastructure. So the end user is paying more for it, but the City of Temple is not receiving more for it.
We do on our outside city limits garbage, it is 1.25 times.
5%, if they're a direct customer of the city versus a wholesale customer.
And the same with any water customers,
Yes.
but not the retail
Right.
contracts.
And there are a couple of other places outside of in our ETJ that are receiving water services. And we talked about some of those, but we're not always bound by past decisions. So that's why we really need a formal official policy decision by council. And then we can rely on that to do something different.
Well, what would happen to those that are receiving?
They would continue to receive.
They're not getting this.
Water availability drives so much of our economic development process, both residential and commercial, industrial. And so to me, I think it would be unwise just to, lose that capacity when they're not even supporting the cities that tax dollars.
I'm changing, times change, so we do need to protect our own fuel.
Should we, not today, but make a decision to look at a future date, making some changes with existing services that are outside the city limits that have been receiving and paying the same rate. I'm not saying that overnight one cuts them off, but we could look at the process, see if we wanted to say within 5 years that XYZ is going to change.
I think at least for utility service, you are required to provide continuous and adequate service. So for the customers, I think it would be a difficult thing to do
To make any
to
change.
have existing customers no longer have service. Solid waste, which I know is not our topic today, we can look at that in more detail if that's desired. The wholesale customers, we have contracts with them that have, a date specific term. So we are at least locked into providing service to them through that term. And then after that, a decision could be made whether we should continue to provide wholesale service or if it would, we would need to do more.
Well, I don't want to take up
Research.
time today, but maybe that's something, the wholesale one, we could begin to look at. If there are enough of them and it means enough money that it might be worth looking at.
We can definitely do that. I believe there's 4.
So you're getting the needed head nod.
I think yes. We have a draft ordinance amendment that's out for other departmental review, and as soon as we gather all those comments, we're able to incorporate them, then we'll bring it back. I guess a workshop presentation at that point.
You mean a future workshop?
How long till something like this is on the agenda?
I would say if not your next meeting, then the next one after
Okay.
that.
All right. Council, anything else before we move on? Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Can I ask a question about that as far as implementation? So as we continue to get these requests, we are not extending it as a couple months.
Based upon these
We're not
conversations.
waiting for policy to come out.
But if we will need to provide the service, if they're willing to extend our distribution network within our CCN,
let's take a staff conversation offline. We'll get all that answered before we bring it back for council.
Very good. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to item 4, which is to receive departmental updates from Performance Excellence, IT, and Public Works. And it looks like Performance Excellence is up first.
That, up to that. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I am here for departmental update, as Mayor said. I'm really excited about this update because I have some great progress to show you. And I also bought treats.
You heard, huh?
Yeah.
Super easy.
So starting with our performance and analytics division accomplishments, I want to start off because we have some new faces. So Christine Liao leads this division. She's our performance and analytics manager. I know you all are familiar with Christine. We have a new face here. This is Mike Treherne. He is our business data analyst, and he joined us in May and has really been doing a fantastic job. And then I also want to introduce you to Christine's special new addition. And remember the last time you were probably with Christine was just prior to her having her. This is Josephine Ruth, and they call her Josie, and she is just turned 6 months old, happy, healthy, wonderful. So I'm going to start with personnel. We completed 2 rounds of the hiring process to fill our business data analyst position. And the reason I wanted to kind of mention that specifically is I wanted to share a little bit about a collaboration that we had in regards to that, filling that position. So when we started with that position, when we first posted it, it was posted as a performance analyst. And the applicants that we got didn't really have the skills and background that we were looking for. So we went back and collaborated with HR, specifically Tara. She did some research and made the suggestion of a title change to business data analyst. We made some tweaks to our job description, and we got our second round. We really got some great applicants and landed on Mike. Like I said, he started in May. And I just wanted to kind of talk about that and do a kudos to Tara for her help and really helping us find a good fit for that position. So the strategic plan we completed the FY23 update to the strategic plan, which added 29 new strategic initiatives, 4 new organizational priorities. We had 5 strategic initiatives that we tweaked the wording on just to make them fit a little bit better the intent. And then we had 4 strategic initiatives that we deleted and 2 organizational priorities that were deleted. So the KPI and dashboarding, that is really all about our efforts toward accountability and transparency. And so some of the accomplishments there, we created a safety data dashboard. We created new KPI dashboards in Tableau. And then we designed some performance and analytics pages for our website that include strategic plan progress by focus area and goal, and some department performance pages. And so I'm going to take a little bit of a detour and go out to our website and show you this, these pages. Okay. So I'm going to start with the safety data dashboard, and this is information that the data comes from TML. And we have that data going back all the way to 1983. And this is a dashboard that we are going to be sharing with departments. We haven't done that quite yet because we have a few things that we want to tweak on it. But when you look at it, it is complete. It is very interactive in that you can filter for different things. You can filter for the contract type. So is it workers' comp, automobile liability, general liability, and then you can see the red line represents the cost, and then the stacked bars represent the cases in the different contract types. So it's a way for us to really be able to see over time what our safety experience has been. We also have another tab for claims by department. And I have this filtered down just to make it a little easier to see. I have it filtered on workers' comp and really just the last 5 years. But it's a way for us to see, you know, department and share with departments their safety experience. And I think this one is probably my favorite, and because you can filter that down again for as many years as we want to look at, but it's looking at the cause of the loss. So with TML, they have a general cause and then a more detailed cause. And so we can use this really to look at maybe over the last year or last, 2 or 3 years to see what has been the, what has occurred the most. Is it slips, trips and falls, back injuries, that kind of thing, which can help us in performance excellence and really delivering targeted safety training. We can find out we have issues, right? But it's also helpful to the departments to see the same thing. So this is by month. So this is just for 2022, our total recordable injuries. And recordable injuries are those that require something more than just first aid. And then days away, restricted and transferred are incidents where an employee was injured enough that they either had to be away from work or had to be on light or restricted duty. And it's interesting, that one's interesting to me because in 2022, when we had that COVID spike in January, you can see that reflected in those numbers. So I'm going to move on to our performance and analytics pages. So down here at the bottom of this page, we have a tile for our strategic plan, departmental performance, and our performance reports. So I'm going to start with the strategic plan. So on this page, we have the actual strategic plan document is out there. So the most current strategic plan is out there. And then we have a tile for each of our focus areas. I'm going to click into high performing organization. And then you'll see the 3 goals that fall under high performing organization. Click into that, and this is live data from Smartsheet, which if you'll remember, Council, that's where we're tracking the strategic plan. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. And so what we're reporting out here to the public is you have your goal, the commitment, we have the strategic initiative, the lead department, and the status of that initiative. So we have that for each strategic, each focus area, each goal. Then I'm going to move on to our departmental performance page. So we have a tile created for every department, and we've been developing interactive performance dashboards for these departments. We are not complete with all the departments. We've completed 7. We've created 7 of the dashboards, so it's still a work in progress. Clicking on the airport, you'll just bear with me for a minute. It's a little hard to see because it's still zoomed in. So what we have here, this is the airport. And so we have a dashboard that has all 3 of the charts and the KPI that we're tracking here. So monthly fuel sales, percent of cost covered by revenue, number of aircraft arrivals and departures. And again, like I said, it is something that it's interactive. So you can hover over and get a data definition. It tells you what you're looking at. If you come up here, then there is a separate tab for each of those charts. Again, all interactive, so you can filter by, depending upon the measure, you can filter by year, you can filter, by month. Just want to show you 1 or 2 other really quickly. So this is the dashboard for communications and marketing, and you'll see they have 3 different tabs. They have the city's social media dashboard, they have the police social media dashboard, and the website traffic dashboard. And so again, it's something that citizens are interested in, that they can get around in there and play around and filter the data and look at it, kind of slice it and dice it in different ways. I'll show you one more because it's really cool. So this is the dashboard for the fire department and, they're tracking total calls for service, turnout and total emergency response time and total calls by incident. And then again, they have a tab for each one of those. But something else that's really cool out here is this map of incident types. So, you can come and filter on type of incident, whether it is a fire, building fire, grass fire, you can filter on the year, you can filter on the month, even the day and the hour. So you can do a lot of filtering and it's interesting information. Same kind of thing for station response. You can filter the incident type, you can filter the year and filter the station. And then we have counts by incident type. So, Kelly, if you don't mind, if you go back to the presentation. So these are the dashboards. Oh, I'm so sorry. These are the dashboards that the performance and analytics team has been working on. I think it's a really great step forward in, like I said, our goal in accountability and transparency.
And how would the city staff and departments use that data? I mean, I know that it's something that's that the citizens can go out and take a look at, right? But they're mostly going to be going out there for curiosity's sake. What's the use inside the organization?
Well, so departments can, for instance, if you think about that, the station response. So we can use that information to see is one station responding, maybe outside its capacity, or are we having, responses out where maybe there's some dead zone where we don't necessarily have a good coverage for our fire station. Solid waste could use that information to track the efficiency of its routes and so things like that. So departments will use it in different ways depending upon what they are measuring.
And who is it your department that's actually entering that data, or are you pulling that electronically from other places?
So we set up KPI tracking sheets in Smartsheet, and the departments actually fill those in. And then we use we pull the data from Smartsheet into Tableau and do all of our tabulating and creating those graphical representations of it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So data and analytics, this is really where, the performance and analytics team is really a resource internally for departments, for analytical work. And so, for instance, a department director may have a business question that they want to have help answering. And so they'll reach out to this crew. And we have a couple of examples of that. Solid waste. We did some work with solid waste on a solid waste route utilization and vehicle work order review, police department vehicle work order review. And then one thing I wanted to mention is Mike met with TEDC about some interesting potential collaborations around data modeling. Just highlighting some professional development. Christine completed the ICMA High Performance Leadership Academy. Mike completed the Tableau Essentials training. And then internal support, that's something that our department has done a lot of. Some things that we've worked on related to safety. We developed an automated supervisor's investigation report and accident or incident report. And that's a way that, part of how we report our workers' comp injuries. That's all, for as long as I've been with the city, that's a paper form. And so now we have developed a system that could do it electronically. Fire, we redesigned their training academy, Smartsheet workflows for greater efficiency. And police, we did some police officer performance metrics and CID reports dashboards.
Could you tell us what ICMA is under Christine?
International City and County Managers Association.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Whoever said that.
That was Brent.
Brent, thank you.
The organizational development division. So there's another new face there. Ashley is not new to the city. She actually came to Performance Excellence from the Human Resources Department, but Ashley Cooper leads this division. She's the Organizational Development Manager. We sadly have a vacancy. Our safety coordinator position is vacant right now. And then we have Virginia Suarez, who is the very friendly face that visitors to City Hall see. So employee engagement, this division has been really busy. So we conducted the annual United Way Giving campaign, International Women's Day celebration, Administrative Professionals Day, Take Our Daughters and Sons to Work Day, Lions Junction employee event, a City Hall picnic, Beat the Heat Snow Cone event, and just most recently the Halloween costume contest, and Dawn his group was the winner. And then Imperform. Imperform is our new performance review tool. We completed the build out of that system. We conducted some pilot testing with the police department and communications and marketing. And then most recently, that system has gone live. We completed all of the training with managers and users. And then safety, when our safety coordinator left the city in September, but he had a good year where he was really focused on training. And these are some of the training classes that he either conducted or facilitated. So heat stress, hazard communication, forklift training, hands-only CPR, backhoe training, tree trimming, safety, First Amendment auditors training, and then workplace violence awareness and prevention training. We are almost to the finish line with our safety policy manual. It's in review with the city attorney's office. We have collaborated with HR and the city attorney's office on some changes to Administrative Directive 5, which covers risk management in our vehicle accident review board. We also developed a monthly safety talk, which is some safety tips that we send out each month with a different topic for employees. And then we had the Texas Department of State Health Services conducted a hazard communication audit, and we passed with flying colors. And some of that was, a great deal of that was due to our collaboration with Parks Maintenance and Pools. That's what their focus was on. So they did a lot of work to really make sure that we were prepared. And then new employee orientation, we've been collaborating with the Human Resources Department to redesign our NEO program so that it incorporates our new employer brand and our core values. And then Synovia is the in-car tracking system, and that had previously really been managed by IT and the fleet department. That is coming over to Performance Excellence from a safety perspective, so we're working through that transition. And then finally, visitor management, we collaborated with IT on some improvements to our visitor management process. And this kind of blew my mind. Since April, when the City Hall reopened after the remodel, we've had over 6,000 visitors to City Hall. It feels like a lot to me. So I have a little video of some, pictures of the different engagement things that we've done over the last several months. There is no music.
You gotta sing.
Yes. You would want earplugs if I did that. But we've had really great responses to our engagement events, and I have actually on the next, once this video plays, I have gotten a lot of email responses from employees that are, have been really engaged and have appreciated the different things that we've done. Might see some little familiar faces in here in a minute.
There's one. He's cute.
Cute little kid.
Oh, look at her.
Those were really good.
They were good. They were good. we had some great Halloween costume contest entries this year. So this is just a few of the, feedback and responses that we've gotten from employees, just expressing their appreciation for the different events and things that we put on. So I'm going to switch gears and talk about our priorities for the next 6 months. So for the Performance and Analytics Division, the strategic plan, we are working on developing a sort of standard procedure for how we update and how we create the strategic plan. One of the things that is important, I think, in that process is we'd like to see a way for citizens to play a part in that process. And so we have been working on researching a strategic plan advisory committee, which would be the citizens arm of that process. And so we are working to develop a recommendation regarding the timeline and the development of the 2025 strategic plan. The annual performance report, we are so close to having that completed. We're actually going to have it to Bryn for review next week. And then we'll be back in December to present that performance report to you. The KPI performance dashboards, we'll be completing the build out of those for the rest of the department that don't have them yet. We'll post that 22 performance report to our website. And then we're going to be collaborating with the finance department to develop some financial transparency dashboards and reporting in OpenGov. And then Christine is actually a member of this year's Leadership Temple class. And then Mike is going to be working on modeling data using R.
What does using R mean?
R is a programming language. So that's how I understand it. I did want to talk a little bit more in detail about the comprehensive survey program, which is another one of our priorities. And we will be working with our partner departments to create a survey program roadmap. And we'll be kicking off the 2023 community survey. And then one survey that I wanted to kind of call out specifically is the employee experience survey. We'll be designing that and developing it for a February of 2023 deployment. So when we think about developing a comprehensive survey program, the different elements and the things that we have to, consider and plan for, one of the things we think about is our audience, our target responders. And, are we targeting an internal or external audience? We also think about the schedule or the interval of a survey. And so we have 3 different intervals we've listed here. You have a fixed interval, which would be a survey that is conducted the same time every year or the same time every 2 years in the example of the community survey, or after the same annual event. So, think a survey after the Christmas parade of citizens to get their feedback about the parade. Then you have a rolling interval, and rolling are things that's a survey that could happen at any time, but there's a trigger that makes that survey happen. And an example of that would be an exit survey. So when an employee resigns their position with the city, an exit survey is done. Another example would be a follow-up to a program that, the recreation department or the library might do. We send out a survey to the participants to get their feedback. And so that would happen after the program. And then finally, the static or unique. And those are those things that those happen because you want to get some specific, you want to get feedback on a specific thing. So, if you are contemplating a new bond package, you might want to do a survey to get to find out if there is support for that, if there's citizen support for that, or a new program or an initiative. So those are some examples of when you might use that static or unique comprehensive survey. So ultimately, I think what I want to kind of end with on this slide is the goal of a comprehensive survey program is really to provide departments and city leadership with quality, actionable feedback from citizens and from employees. So organizational development, personnel, we're going to have to hire the safety coordinator, want to fill that position. Imperform, remember that's the performance evaluation tool. We'll be completing the FY22 performance review process, and then we will begin our quarterly check-in process for the learning management system. We are finalizing our vendor selection now, so we're going to be implementing the content, developing, some course bundles and core content, and then we'll be training our users on that system. And then safety, we'll be presenting the safety policy manual to the city manager and then to council, finalizing our recommendations on Administrative Directive 5, and we'll be presenting that to the city manager, and we'll roll out to our departments the safety policy manual. And then employee engagement, we have several events coming up. Hopefully you received your invitation to the Veterans Day employee recognition that we're going to be doing. We have the Christmas party, years of service. Something new we're doing is organization days, which is really a organization team building type of thing that we want to do. And then the candy that the popcorn that we handed out is just popping by. It's another engagement tool where we're out at a department, we can take some snacks and just kind of engage with employees. And then we will be collaborating with HR to develop a leadership development program. I'm going to finish things off with 2 of our KPIs. So total recordable injury rate. What I want to highlight here is that our rate, which is the top blue line, it has decreased from 2021. The bars represent the number of recordable injuries. And so that was also lower this year than the previous year, actually really lower than the previous 2 years. So that's good progress. And then days away, restricted and transferred, same kind of, experience. Our rate at the top is going down. And those, we still had, less than last year, but maybe a little bit more than 2 years ago. So I think we are moving in the right direction. And I am happy to answer any questions.
That was a lot.
Wow.
Have a whole different flavor than we normally get from the group. Thank you for that. Council, anything else?
No, very impressive, very impressive. Thank you.
I think I say this every time that you do a presentation. We work hard, lots of data is generated. I appreciate the efforts and work from city manager's office and, everyone to be able to fund that and take that data and be able to do something with it. It makes us just a little bit better every year. Yeah, so very much appreciate that.
Thank you.
Forward thinking.
Oh, you. And I think a big milestone was reached that I'm really excited about, because when we first developed the strategic plan together in 2019, I told you all that, we would be, if you gave your time to invest in creating this strategic plan, that we would be using it to move the organization forward, and we would be accountable to that plan, both to you and to the residents and citizens of Temple. And we've done that through our annual performance report, but now we have a live data feed to our website so that at any time you have the exact up-to-date information on where any given strategic plan initiative is. Even if it's delayed, we are, you will have that information. So, and residents will have that information. So that was a good, for me, an exciting milestone that we were able to begin implementing that as a live feed from our smart sheet system into the public.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Sorry?
Okay.
So IT's next, I have no food for you, I have no crap, and nothing. I don't have a puppy. I don't have a baby, I have nothing. So
We're ready for Dawn.
I'll make this quick, you can get to Don, because I'm sure he's got some props.
Now, we don't expect anything more from him.
We're no, yeah, pair me up with it. All
In
right,
which case, just close it down, we're leaving.
that's right. I'll make it quick for you. First of all, I have our organization. It's grown a little bit probably since you've seen it last time, but we have just a few vacant spots. We've been interviewing and having a difficult time finding people for these positions like everybody else. Our completed projects for Q2, PrimeGov, we worked with Janice's team to create a unified form for all of the applications or applicants. We created custom agendas and workflows for other boards and commissions, not just council. We transitioned our financial system to the cloud. We had our first major upgrade in July. Everything seems to be going really good.
Except those passwords.
Yeah, the passwords. I will tell you that in the upgrade that we're gonna do in February, you'll at least get a warning.
They don't need
It's
to
gonna
warn you.
expire.
They just
At least tell you
shut
it's
it
gonna
down.
expire. So, surveillance cameras, we're installing them throughout the city, but in Q2, we installed some at Hillcrest and working on the CNG station. We worked with purchasing to replace copiers. They manage the contract with CTWP, so with install. We renewed our Microsoft contracts, and I put this in here because of how expensive this is getting, and we're on a 3-year contract at this point. But everybody that has email, we have to have a license, and you'll know how expensive that gets. And I know Don's looking for a few more people to be added, but we have to weigh the cost versus the reward. Very expensive. And then building control access at the fire station. Things that we are going to accomplish in Q3 and 4 is 15.5. It's a new weekly reporting software for, I think, all of executive leadership reports to Brent on a weekly basis. And I think that might be growing a little bit, maybe. MVIX, we worked with Janice's team to get a TV downstairs so that she can post all of her agendas on TV instead of printing papers to try to make them all work on the sticky board. We helped with the finishing of the renovations downstairs. MyGovernment Online, it's software that we've been using for planning and permitting since 2018. And we just like to go back and do a process review and make sure that we're taking advantage of any new things that have been added or any processes that have changed, any adjustments. And we do that with all of our software. And we're working on adding online payments for accounts receivable, the business licenses, hotel, motel, taxes. Today, we only have online payments available for utility billing. And then WebTrack.
Will there ever be automatic payments for water?
Yeah,
Is
we
there
do have-
already? Please don't tell me there already.
We do. We do. There.
2008.
That all?
I,
Only
that's,
14 years?
that's when I moved here and we've had it then.
I felt for the flyer on my water bill, I would have known.
Because otherwise my water probably would be every month.
I've had the water department call me before and say, Mayor, you need to pay your bill. Whoops.
Other projects that we're working on, the interactive voice response. So it's for utility billing, people can make a payment over the phone. We're transitioning that to the cloud. Proofpoint is our email security. We did the training, that boring training that y'all have sat through for, I think it was 36 minutes or something the other day. We reported to the state, we had 100% compliance. And that was in August. We're adding an addition to our fleet software that's called Cursor, and it's a motor pool edition, so we can better track shared vehicles. We don't have anything to track those now. Central Square, we purchased some e-learning software, and this hasn't been completely rolled out yet, but it's It's basically for our financial software. We have new employees that can take module-specific training. There's also some general classes. I think there's some Microsoft classes in there. But we're working on rolling that out right now. Finance was good enough to help us with some of the testing and setting up other. I will continue to install cameras and replace cameras. And then we're working on updating our court software. This is supposed to be a major upgrade, Tracy, that's just gonna make our world so much better. And it adds signature pads so we can eliminate some papers.
But has it? Not yet.
It keeps getting pushed. And then ongoing projects, things that we're continuing to work on is the police records management software. We spend a lot of time with Chief. I have about half my team working on this, so it's great. But we're the host for 12 other agencies, and we're looking at maybe a March 24 implementation. All the construction, you're all familiar with all the buildings and all the IT work that needs to be done in those buildings and additions. Replacing the systems, we have everything on a 5-year cycle, the desktop, the laptop, and the MDTs for PD are on 4-year cycle. More access control, and then like Stacey had talked about the Synovia, which has been purchased or renamed to Talam. It's the tracking device that we put in vehicles. We recently are in the process of upgrading from 3G to 4G devices. Our devices will stop working pretty soon. We're also going to do a reconciliation to see what vehicles need it added, because I'm not sure, pretty random on what vehicles it was put on and what it's not. So we're working with Stacey's team to identify those vehicles that don't have them and need them. And when you think of IT, you don't always think of GIS. So I wanted to make sure that I talked about GIS a little bit today. They make a lot of maps, but they do a lot of other things too. Ptolemy is software that the Community Housing and Development team uses. The GIS team is feeding data to it so that Nancy can get what she needs out of it. Chameleon, same thing, needs addresses so that they can find the lost animals, and that doesn't, the software doesn't allow automatic updates, so we manually have to push addresses. I think we do it 2 or 3 times a year. Periodic update, this is simply so that GIS doesn't have to enter data twice. We can transfer it from our Esri over to Nataline. Cemetery application, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But when we first took over the cemetery, we just had cloth papers that we had to put into a system to find out what was available, what had already been reserved, what was filled. It was a nightmare. Now we have that online, and we also are getting ready to implement a tool so that citizens can go online and find people. And then tennis court reservations, we made this application for parks. They're, I guess, having a hard time making sure that they're reserving courts to Temple citizens or Temple business owners. They go through a process to verify that they're tied to Temple in some way before they give them an account to do a reservation. Next quarter, things we're going to be working on is a water outage map, and I'll show you that here pretty soon. And then mowing details, we're adding that to the CMO map, and that's so that we can calculate what we mow, what departments mow, what areas, and then what we contract out. We're adding the tax increment zone to the CM map, with boundaries, and thanks Tracy for being around long enough to keep all the documents that we needed to put it in there. And then obviously constantly updating and keeping our standards up to date. Routeware, we're working with Justin to add another garbage and potentially recycling route and optimize those routes. And then I put in here a new plotter, which seems like a trivial thing, but we ordered it it was 11 months to the day before we actually got it. So when y'all are asking for printed maps, we had to go third party. We can print them now. Okay, and then there are ongoing projects, obviously. As built cleanups, we have, again, a lot of paper documents that are not readable anymore. We're trying to get everything scanned and in a way that they're readable. A lot of it, like I said, is unreadable. And then we're adding it as a layer onto the map so that you all can have access to them. We're adding floodplain data to My Government Online. So nobody goes to the floodplain. CityWorks, the data that Don's team puts into CityWorks actually imports into GIS. So we do a quality control review every month of that data to make sure we're putting the right information in GIS. And then we're collecting new data. We're working with Parts specifically right now to get them on CityWorks for work orders. So it's GIS centric software, so we have to have an asset for everything that they work on. And then keeping our data up to date in Navaland as well as we. And then I just want to show you real quick the application that they made for Hillcrest. It looks like this. It is a little bit slow, but it's because of the number of records you can see here. If you're looking for somebody specific. I'll tell you down here, it found 132 Smiths. And this is the specific person. It zooms in and tells you where they're at. And it will also show you a picture of their headstone.
Cool. How long have y'all been working on that?
Oh, since we took over Hillcrest.
3 years ago?
18. This is what we started with, about 40 of those. So the one on the left is actually insane. It's still a work in progress, to be honest with you. We have a lot of conflicting information. We had maybe 2 sheets that were like this that had totally different information on it.
The same plot or whatever.
Yeah. And we had a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, we had some lots that were sold to people. We had to make some move around. Yeah.
Can we get that sewer line map, Kelly?
Yes, Don.
I'll be back there on the street.
And then this is the Crossroads application that they made. Before GIS made this, they just had a spreadsheet and they were putting the address in, and then they had to go somewhere else to verify where the customer or the applicant was really located. This does all of it for them. And it puts these little checks on a map, and if they got a little red check, that means, yep, they're good to go. They're within the city. That's one of the little colored dots. They're not.
And it can be a business.
Yes, yep. If they bring in anything, then they use it. But that part is manual. But yes. And then the water outage application that we're working on. This is so citizens can report problems and they can go see what problems have been reported. This is the information they fill out, and then on the back end, this is what we see. There'll be all the little colored dots on the map, and then when you click on one on the left hand side over here, it'll give you all of the details. Our KPIs, which always look the same. Next quarter, we're gonna have different ones to report to you.
Very good.
Mayor, I feel like we do not have enough time to give to Public Works to do them justice. So I would recommend you reschedule.
Time to get him, so we can.
Time to get
Candy for
yeah.
2 weeks from now.
Don't give them too hard.
Okay, very good. That sounds good. Then we will skip the departmental update from Public Works. I will adjourn this meeting at 20 minutes before 5.